Welcome to Truckee Talks. I'm your host, Maya Schneider, and this week we're bringing you Pat Davison. Pat is the field director for CABPRO. Pat, welcome.
Thank you, Maya.
It's nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Okay, first question. CABPRO, the California Association of Business, Property, and Resource Owners?
What a mouthful.
Yeah, it is. What does that mean?
Well, it was an organization that was started to represent the interests of business owners and property owners in the western part of the county, although I think there was some interest here for the eastern part as well, focused primarily on county issues. And the name CABPRO was chosen because there was some thought given to having groups in other counties as well, a Butte County CABPRO, a Placer County CABPRO, and so that name would fit with the different variations county by county. So.
And you're the field director for the eastern Nevada County?
Correct.
Okay. And how many members do you represent?
Well, we don't disclose that number, so it's
the first question
board
right
policy.
Out of the chute here.
That's okay. But I can tell you a little bit about the membership.
Please do.
We have pretty diverse cross-section of people, and here in Truckee it is interesting to me to see the broad cross-section. We have second homeowners, we have businesses, mom and pop small businesses, cross-section of people that are involved in the development community. We've also got people that are recreation interests, and some of that is because some of the other issues that we look at from a land use perspective. And then just people that are interested and concerned and want to make sure that there's balance when decisions are made about land use issues. So pretty broad cross-section and something I think gives us a strength.
What are some of the concerns that are being expressed by your members? Is it a wide range of concerns? Are there specific areas?
It's a wide range, and my background has been such that I experience in dealing with public lands as well as private lands. So we've gotten involved in things like the Boxer Wilderness Bill. Senator Boxer's introduced legislation that would put a new designation on certain areas around the state. Well, in our own backyard, it's Castle Peak and Grouse Lakes, and so we got involved and took a position on that because of some member interest, snowmobile usage, mountain bike usage, and forest health and private property interests that would be affected by that legislation. Donner State Park, the acquisitions, the expansion of the state park, brought in some new members, people that are affected by the expansion. Either they live in the area or
Coldstream Canyon.
Correct. And then other issues that are more specific to Truckee, growth and development, general plan update, the town hall site selection. You know, those were the kinds of issues that I was hearing from people, and a willingness to kind of commit ourselves to those sorts of things. Broader things like Lahontan cutthroat trout, the TMDL process that we're pretty heavily engaged with right now. So pretty wide range of issues, and I think that represents the people that are in the area. It's not just what's in their own backyard, but maybe what they see, you know, the scenic vista ahead is also an issue. So.
How active was your organization in the recent Measure D? We're filming this on the day after the election, so we know the outcome of Measure D, or at least before it's certified, we know the outcome of Measure D. How active was your organization in that?
CABPRO was pretty active, more so on the west side of the county. What you saw there were people that had a concern about what the county was doing, and the majority of the population on the west side of the county is the unincorporated portion. It's not within Grass Valley or Nevada City. So they are much more in tune with what's happening at the county level, and so our membership there was much more engaged. Letters to the editor, going to the debates, putting signs up, and all of the different aspects of the campaign. And CABPRO actually filed a donor campaign statement, a statement to the Fair Political Practices Commission as a participant and a donor to that activity. It was in-kind donations, but it was our staff in the western half of the county that was
in support of Measure D.
Correct.
And of course, a thumbnail sketch of Measure D was sort of a protection measure, if you will, for property owners who are concerned about takings.
Right.
Government coming in and rezoning or downzoning their property.
In a simplistic way, it was a reimbursement process, like a claims process. Snowplow hits your car, you turn in a claim for reimbursement. Well,
then you wait 7 years.
Well, we didn't want to see that happen, so the process was designed to give you a pretty quick response. But in a nutshell, that's an accurate description.
Well, with the failure of Measure D, will CABPRO or any other organization that you're aware of be rewriting it, revisiting it to put it back on the ballots?
To be honest, I haven't talked to our board of directors to see, but I think the bigger question is the PAC that was formed, Citizens for Fair and Balanced Land Use, which was the actual umbrella organization that coordinated the opposition or the support for the legislation or for the ballot measure. They probably will want to decide whether to do something, and we would be under that umbrella as we were if they did decide to go forward. But I think even in defeat, there was some accomplishment here that people started to think about. What happens to a property owner if we say, well, you can't use half of your property because of oak trees or riparian corridors or whatever scenic view shed? What happens to that property owner? And is that a reasonable use of governmental power? Is that how we want our government to operate? And would you as a property owner want to be treated that way? So I think all those questions got raised, and there was some good, serious discussion about that, and I don't want to see that stop. So even if nothing happens once all the votes are counted on Measure D and it's dead, I still want to hear the discussion and make sure people are aware of the consequences and what happens to property owners. So.
Let's talk a little bit about your background and how you got involved with CABPRO, and I can vouch for your activity as far as coming to town council meetings. You're at every single town council meetings. There's the Pat chair.
Yeah, that's right.
It's got your name on it, and nobody dares sit there. But let's talk about you, Pat. Where do you come from originally? Where do you hail from?
Well, raised in Philadelphia, and talk about row houses and high density. Boy, that was
traditional
my
urban design there.
Upbringing, and we moved out to California in 1971, lived in Southern California, met my husband in high school, we got married, went through college, and in 1992 got the opportunity to move up here and just jumped at the chance. We had come to Truckee on vacation, loved the area, loved the Eastern Sierra, and so it was a perfect situation for us to leave Southern California and come up here. So in February, it'll be 10 years we've actually lived in Truckee.
And is that how long you've been with CABPRO?
No. CABPRO's time, let's see, December of 2000, so it'll be 2 years in December. And I worked for land use organizations since 1985, so I've been involved with a statewide recreation group and then an umbrella organization fighting a wilderness and parks bill, and worked with the National Property Rights and Public Lands group from 92 to 2000, and that group dissolved in 2000, and so I started working for CABPRO after that. So I went from the national scene where I was traveling all over the country, up and down California, going to Wisconsin and other states, helping property owners get involved, learn the basics of how they can influence decision making, and now helping property owners. So I'm really fortunate to be able to work here and do this.
Truckee seems to me to be the petri dish of land use, economic pressures versus environmental pressures versus social pressures and the growth in our community at large. Certainly in this small community, you have to at least see, if not interface with, a number of people perhaps on the environmental side who would have different views than those of CABPRO. Do you find yourself working with or against or not either of those two options, those groups?
I think everybody needs to be at the table, and I'm a real strong believer in having the chairs there and doing everything possible to make sure that all interested parties are at the table. The difficulty, I think, comes when you talk about philosophy and core philosophies or positions. Sometimes they can't be changed, and there is no middle ground, and that's frustrating to me. And at least in those situations, I hope that all parties are honest to say, you know, this is really how I feel, and it's a strong position that I have.
That's immovable.
Right.
I'm not going anywhere from here.
And so you focus on the common ground where you can move forward, where everybody can agree, and see that as a step of progress, whatever that direction may be. But generally speaking, I think a lot of times people come into these issues without a full depth of the issue. They don't understand all of the facts and figures, and if if I can be successful in helping somebody understand that, then the better decision is being made. And that's my goal, is that if we're going to make these decisions, let's make sure we understand all the consequences so that all of the people sitting at the table know what's going to happen once we make decision A or decision B.
Well, the beauty of any collaborative process is the education opportunities. And I think we all show up at the table with, here's my narrow scope, and it may be very deep, but it's not very wide.
Yeah,
and now I'm going to learn about yours, and it widens a little bit more.
I think that builds respect among the stakeholders, and I'm just a real strong believer that when you start to label people or you don't give them the respect that they're due, it's really hard to sit at the table and talk to them. So I'm just a real believer that, you know, we all come to this with kind of an equal footing and give each other a chance to explain who we are and what we're all about.
Do you ever find that your personal belief system conflicts with your job, or are you ever asked to do something that might be a little contrary to how you would do it? Well,
I think sometimes, though, that's just a result of not understanding either what I'm being asked to do. I generally will question and go back and try and get some more direction, and, you know, is this really what you want to do? And so I've been able to work those things out. But yeah, those situations come up, and I'm there to work for the members. I represent them, and so if there's something about, I usually ask, you know, can we talk about this some more? Why would we do this? What's the goal here? And try and get a better understanding. And 9 times out of 10, we have a meeting of the minds and we go forward. But CABPRO is governed by a board of directors. And we also have here in Truckee a policy group that I set up so that I had a local sounding board so that I could say, you know, what do you think about this issue? So when I speak in front of the town council or planning commission, usually our local policy group has looked through the comments, you know, redlined it for me, told me what they like or don't like, and so we go through that. That's
important whenever you're a staff member carrying out board direction. That's important. I've been on both sides of that coin, so I have some empathy for that. You've been active in a variety of political things, and I want to pull this sign out right now because I think this is something our viewers will really appreciate. Let's see if we... All right, Pat.
Explain.
Explain.
We had a meeting in July, and the members wanted to do a variety of things for the election. So we put together a list. We did a candidate survey. We put together 10 questions, sent them to all the 9 candidates for town council. We did a briefing book for the candidates so that they had position papers from CABPRO, who we are and what we're all about, our issues. We did the candidate forums, which thank you very much, Channel 6.
Thank you very much, Mary Lou Sullivan,
for all the help that you gave on that. And then the last thing is we wanted to do voter registration, partly because Truckee's turnout at previous elections had been less than stellar on some occasions, although I think this one probably we did much better. But we wanted to do voter registration, and so for 2 different days we sat outside. Charlie White sat with me one day, and Susie Cordero sat with me another day, and we had a table set up with that sign, Stop Global Whining, Register and Vote, and talked to people about registering to vote. Gave out probably 20 different, 20 forms for people to take home and fill out. So, but most of the people that we talked to, I'd say 150, 200 people that we talked to in the 5 hours, all said they were registered, and I think we only had 10 or 12 that said no, they're not going to vote, they didn't want to vote, and real negative. But so that was our voter registration
drive.
Visual aid, yeah.
It was great. Stop Global Whining is perfect. Well, and speaking of drives, the town of Truckee is embarking on their general plan update. How involved will you and CABPRO be in that?
Well, that's a good question. I think our members see it as a very important issue. We did a survey and that came out as pretty high on the list of important issues. We are at this point trying to get a little more background on a hot issue, inclusionary housing, from a very basic what is it to what are the different variations that implemented here in Truckee, and we've actually invited Tony Lashbrook to come speak, and he's agreed. We've got a date set of Friday, December 6th. It will be a luncheon open to the public, discussion on the pros and cons of inclusionary housing, And because of a lot of our members don't know what that is, I've asked Tony to provide a pretty basic description of what the concept is and then how it would be applied and what are the benefits as well as drawbacks. So that's tied into the general plan update because we see housing and changes in the general plan being a possible decision that we'll have to make. You know, our members will have to look at that and make a decision.
So Friday, December 6th, it's a luncheon open to the public. The telephone number for the field office is
582-4051.
So if they want information on that, they can call and find out. And we'll have
Yes,
that
ma'am.
number up on the screen. Oh, look, we
There
already
we
do have that
go.
number up on the
Very
screen. It's
good.
magic, the magic of PTC TV. Thank you, Fletch. That should be an interesting luncheon. And again,
Yeah.
for our viewing public who may not know this, Tony Lashbrook is the Community Development Director for the town of Truckee, and therefore very much involved with land
Yes.
use and
Yes.
planning in our community. What are some of the challenges ahead for CABPRO?
Well, one of my personal goals is to get more of our members involved. I'd like to see more people attending meetings, participating more directly in the process, and I will be working on that in the next year. I think we've got some real interest in our members to learn more how the process works and how they can be part of that. And I want there to be a face to CABPRO besides just me. So I'm really going to work on that. And I think just getting our name out there, getting people to understand who we are and where we stand on some of these issues is an ongoing challenge. But you know, we try and look at what opportunities are there and take advantage where we can.
What do you love about your job, Pat?
Being able to help people tell their story, and I'm a real defender of the underdog, the guy trying to fight by himself. It's always been something that I've, I guess, seen myself as part of, and very often in these issues, it's the property owner by himself trying to make big government understand or the public understand. And I think when we can succeed in that, getting the message out, helping somebody to tell their story, to me that's a personal triumph. That helps the world understand what this person's going through. And I just have a real I guess, need to make sure that there's that sensitivity out there about what that person's going through. And so,
let me ask you your perception on this. Do you think you're making a difference?
in a small way, and because we're still somewhat small here in Truckee, that's realistic, but I sure have my sights set on bigger things. I'd like to see our membership grow where we actually have a large percentage that when we write letters to the editor, when we show up at meetings or make phone calls, that there's an actual large impact from that. So yeah, but I think the difference is things like the Trails Plan. You know, the Planning Commission spent hours. We went through lots of details on the Trails Plan, and I think we came out with a better plan. And that was a result of our members saying, you know, there are things here that maybe could be changed a little bit, and so we worked through that and got, I think, you know, made that difference that you're talking about.
Well, I'm going to take a liberty I rarely do on Truckee Talks, which is to just talk about my experience as a town council member, but I think you should know, and I think our public should know, that you have made a significant difference, not a small difference. And that's important for everybody to know, because everybody that shows up and has something to say makes a difference. And I think a lot of people feel defeated, feel that they're not being listened to, or feel that if they, you know, shove 30 people with their viewpoint into the room, that ought to make a difference in the decision making. And while it does make a difference, there are 14,705 people in the town of Truckee, and we need to be considering all of those people. So it makes a difference when you show up. And don't just show up once, show up a lot.
Right.
You know, be consistent, and you've been that. You've been a great representative for your organization in that way.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, it's feedback you need to have, and I hope your board is listening to me. Your work hasn't been all work. We've got a photo we want to share with the TV land out there. Fletch, if you could bring up that photograph that we have. I want to have Pat. Okay, now, folks aren't going to know this by looking, but that's actually you on the left side of the screen.
Correct.
And who is that you're presenting to?
That's to Roy Rogers. That was 15 years ago.
Thus the hairdo.
Yes, in Barstow, California. It was an event before a congressional hearing, and he was being given an award for his support of multiple use on public lands. He was an avid hunter. Wildlife conservation was one of his pet projects, and he was not only donating money to the cause for wildlife conservation, but he was putting his own time into, he got involved at the grassroots level, and we wanted to recognize that. That's Congressman Jerry Lewis standing on the right side. So it was an event that was pretty high profile and was part of a campaign that I was involved with back in
That was fun.
'87. So yeah.
Meeting Roy Rogers, that's no small deal either. What would you identify, if you could identify one frustration with trying to get people to understand your organization and what it stands for? What do you think is a common misperception about CABPRO?
Well, I've heard most frequently is that we're a front or we're some fake organization, and that's why I want to have faces out there that people can connect. It's not just me, but we actually do represent a broad cross-section. And when we talk about issues like the wilderness bill, there's snowmobilers and mountain bikers and people that are out there that they're not a front for anybody, and I don't tell people what to say. I mean, they're involved and concerned from their own feelings or their own position, and so I guess that would be probably the most common challenge that I have or problem to deal with. But I think that will be evident as we get more involved and people really see that we do have a desire to find common ground. We do represent a broad cross-section. We have what we think are reasonable positions, not extreme, and we always try and use common sense and logic as we look at issues. And if this isn't going to work, then maybe here's an alternative that could work, and present that as part of the discussion.
Have you seen any significant wins or even positive movement in the collaborative process as you speak with other groups and work with other groups?
Oh, I think there has been. I've been personally involved in planning efforts where we've been able to come up with plans, large as well as small. That's much better than seeing a plan go through appeal or lawsuit year after year. There's no final decision, and I have seen those success stories. Quincy Library Group, I think, is an example of what can be done, and I know several of the people that were involved with that. I don't think they've given up, but it's very frustrating when you see all your hard work kind of get pushed to the side.
Yes. Yeah.
So.
And it takes folks with persistence to make it happen.
That's right.
So I give you credit for that. And that's it. I told you that time would go by fast, and it did. Pat Davison, thank you so much for joining us.
Maya, I want to thank you again for the work you and Mary Lou did on the candidate forum. It was excellent.
Well, thank you. I'll pass that along to Mary Lou.
Okay.
She deserves the credit. We've been speaking with Pat Davison, Field Director for CABPRO, and we'll be back in just a minute with upcoming events, so stay tuned. Welcome back to the show. Now we'll talk about upcoming events in and around our region for the week of November 6th. We'll start with November 9th, the Truckee Rotary bringing the Legacy Cadillac Ball back to the resort at Squaw Creek. This annual event raises more than $70,000 for programs for kids and seniors, and this adult-only prom is the social event of the year. This year's theme is Studio 54, so get out your dancing shoes. A very limited number of tickets are still available. Maybe track down a Truckee Rotarian for details. The Women's Wellness Weekend returns to the resort at Squaw Creek also on the weekend of November 15th through the 7th. This event is sponsored by the Community Wellness Department at Tahoe Forest Hospital and features information booths, workshops, fun activities, and guest speakers. Call Janet Brady's crew at 582-3483 for more information. And November 30th, we'll see the return of the Squaw Valley Film Festival. Check out the latest ski and snowboard films from local filmmakers featuring local athletes and local mountains. What a great way to kick off the season. December 6th through the 8th, the Tiny Tim Christmas Village and Holiday Craft Fair returns. The community center in Truckee will be transformed into a turn-of-the-century Old English village, complete with visits from Santa and the elves. Did I say elves? Anyway, contact the Rec and Park at 582-7720 for more information, and hopefully I won't get drafted into elf duty again. That's it for this week. I want to thank Pat Davison again for being our guest on Truckee Talks. We'll be back next week, and we'll see you soon. Thanks for joining us.
Community Foundation is helping to make a difference.
Truckee Tahoe Community Foundation promotes philanthropy and inspires action to build our community. We steward gifts and grants that encompass the environment, education, arts, health and human services, civic and public benefits, youth development, and recreation.
The Truckee Donner Land Trust depends on partners like the Truckee Tahoe Community Foundation to help us achieve our goal of preserving and protecting open space.
Everywhere that we look to grow, the foundation is there to help us.
Contributing has tax advantages and is made simple.
The foundation makes it easy for you to give back to the community. They have the expertise and the knowledge that the community needs to make this an easy process.
Find out how you can make a difference.